Hey, so this is a great question. This is a question in response to my video about how a criminal defense lawyer analyzes an unaliving case. We were talking about the unaliving of the UnitedHealthcare CEO and how you would initially look at how to approach a defense. So a lot of people have been talking about jury nullification. Let me explain to you what jury nullification means really quick. So jury nullification is basically where the jury says, we know the evidence should lead us normally to a guilty, but for some particular reason, we have sympathy for the defendant, we don't like the victim, we're worried that the punishment wouldn't be appropriate, that we're gonna find that person not guilty. That's normally where we see jury nullification. So the best example of jury nullification is if you've ever seen the movie A Time to Kill. It's a great book, great movie with Matthew McConaughey, Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson's in the movie, his young daughter has something horrendous happen to her, and the two disgusting men that did it are brought into the courthouse. Samuel L. Jackson goes in there and unalives the two men, and then Matthew McConaughey plays his defense lawyer. And the end of the movie is very dramatic because Samuel L. Jackson's been brought up on unaliving charges for these two men. And Matthew McConaughey gives this very passionate closing argument. And he talks about, that the jury should imagine all of these awful things happening and then imagine that the little girl was white. And what he's doing is telling them that this could have been you, this could have been your child. And the jury ends up finding Samuel L. Jackson not guilty, even though he unalived these two guys in front of everybody. And that's an example of jury nullification. So a lawyer is not allowed to specifically argue jury nullification. I can't say to a jury, yeah, my client did this clearly, but you should find him not guilty anyway because the law is wrong. The reason we can't do that is because then we are asking the jury to actually ignore their oath which says they're going to be objective, look at the evidence, and then follow the law. And so we're asking them to not follow the law. So theoretically, if we went that far as to actually say that, a judge could, hold us in contempt. He could give an instruction to the jury. There's a couple of different things that could happen. Now, that's not to say that we as defense attorneys don't lean hard toward jury nullification sometimes. We might hint at it. I had a case where a white police officer, in my view, based on my review of the evidence, treated my client differently because my client was black. And in my closing argument, I did say to the jury, this was part of a traffic stop that kind of went badly. And I said, I can't help but wonder, would this officer have treated me differently considering the way I look if I was in, let's say, a minivan or something like that? And the jury ended up coming back with a not guilty on almost every count but one, where my client probably should have been found guilty on the other counts. I don't know that that decision was race-based by the jury, but it was me leaning a little bit into jury nullification based on the police and their behavior. So also I'll say that there's nothing that happens to the jury. If the jury did it, the jury can say, we found what we found and too bad for you to the judge in the state, but a lawyer can't ask for it. So then the question then becomes, do I think in this case where the UnitedHealthcare CEO is unalived, do I think a jury could go so far as to jury nullification? So let's break that down a little bit. First of all, Luigi Mangione is the person that has been arrested for this. Yes, based on what the reports are in the media, it sounds like they have a lot of evidence against him. But I always caution to say, whatever we've seen on the media, we always have to be really careful to assume that everything is correct. So assuming he gets indicted and assuming he goes to trial, could a jury nullify his conviction and refuse to find him guilty because they have sympathy for him? I don't think that would happen in this case. If you kind of compare and contrast it to the story that I just told you from that movie, there was a direct line of passion and anger and just heartbreak between the father and the two victims that were unalived because they had perpetrated this crime. While I think a lot of people, I would say close to everybody, is upset with the insurance industry these days, it's not quite that close of a direct line that there isn't going to be, there may be some sympathy from the jury, but I don't think you can carry that sympathy to the extent to say, we don't blame him for what he did. It was okay that he did this. It was so cold and calculated, almost in the version of a hitman, that it lacked that true level of sympathy. Obviously, there's been reports today coming out that there was something wrong with his mom. Again, I don't know what's true and what's not true. We're all operating on the same tenuous facts right now. But I mean, certainly that's very sympathetic. I would 100% not blame him for being brokenhearted over it. But I just don't see a jury going so far as to say, then it's okay that he did this. That's just too far in my view. I could be wrong, but if I were his defense attorney, I would not be relying on jury nullification. And I've said this in my last video, I just got to say really quick, I am not licensed to practice in New York. I will never have any part of this case. I'm just giving you my opinion based on having some experience in this in Georgia as a criminal defense lawyer. So I hope that answers your questions about jury nullification. You're welcome to keep bringing me the questions and I'll do my best to answer them.